Hello! On this video, I'm going to be talking about C++ functions, specifically calling functions, passing values to the function, and then returning values from the function. So a function is a piece of code that only executes when you call it. And it's very important because there are certain jobs that you want to execute only a certain time of your program. Because of that, you write that code, whatever that is, in a function, and then every time you need to execute the code, you call the function. And you can call the function many times, or you can also never call the function. It's up to you. So first, let's create a function. I'm going to create a very simple function here. So this function, just say hi and nothing else. Or better yet, it's gonna say hello world. Say hello world. So if I want to execute this code, all I have to do is call the function, and the function name is say hello world. So this function here has a couple of components. So let's go over the components of this function. So the first word that you see here is void. Void is the returning type. And later in this video, we're gonna change the returning type to other data types, and you're gonna see a little bit better how this works. So the second thing is say hello world. So say hello world here equals the name of my function. And then finally you have the two parentheses, and inside this parentheses we're gonna put a list of parameters or a list of values that this function receives. So for now we're gonna leave empty, and when you leave empty just means that this function receives no value whatsoever. But again, later in this video we're gonna change this to receive some values right here. Then you have the body of the function. The body starts with the opening of the curly braces and ends with the closing of the curly braces. So the whole body of this function is from, in this case, line 8 to line 10. Let's call this function right here so this function gets executed. So in order to call this function, I'm just gonna copy the name of the function and together with the parentheses, and then when you run this code, line 11 is gonna call this function right here, and then this function gets executed. So I'm gonna run this program and I get hello world here. Now if I don't call that function, I can still execute this code, but just nothing happens. So in other words, you can call this function here 0 times, once, or you can call as many times as you want, and that function will do its job as many times as you call the function. So you have the option to call 1 or 0 or as many times as you want. So there are two ways for you to create the function. One is to simply create the function above the main. So this is my main, and here I create the function above the main. However, you can also create a function below the main, but when you do that, right here in the top, you must have what's called the function declaration. So this is the function declaration, and then here at the bottom is the function definition. So you can either create the function this way with the declaration on the top of the main and then the definition or implementation below the main. I prefer this way just because it looks more organized to me, but you're free to simply create the entire function above the main. So doing so, you will not need the function declaration. Again, I prefer this way because it's more organized, and because whenever I'm reading my code or someone else's code, I always look for the main function first, and then I look for whatever function is in that program. So again, it's a matter of preference. I prefer this way. So for this video, I'm gonna create all my functions with the declaration at the top, and then the definition or implementation on the bottom of the code or after the main, anywhere after the main. So in this case here, I only have one function, but I can have more than one. So I'm gonna have another function here that says, say hi mom. So in this case I have two functions. Now I'm going to define the other function. So hi mom is going to be a function that says hi mom instead of hello world. So now I have two functions, and right here on the say hello world, I'm calling the say hello world. Now I want to call the hi mom function. So if I run this program, now I called both functions and both functions did its job. And I can call any sequence I want, and this thing works just as well. Or you can call different functions at different time, and then it works just as fine. So the way you call the functions can be random or a sequence or any way you want to call the functions. In this code I have my main program calling two functions. So the main calls one function. So in this case here I have the hi mom, which calls this function, and then the hi hello world that calls this function. So when you call the hi mom, everything on the hi mom gets executed, and then after that it goes back to the main and then executes the second function. So in this case here we have the main calling one function, and then after that the main also calls a second function. Now another way that we can do this is having the hi mom calling the say hello world function. So instead of writing the code like that, I can just run the hi mom, and then this function is gonna call the say hello world function. So the hi mom calls this function, executes the code, and then before it ends, it calls the say hello world, and then the say hello world executes, and then once it finishes, it goes back right here on this point. However, at this point it's the end of the function, and then it goes back to the main at this point here, and this point also happens to be the end of the main function. So let's run this code just to show you how it works. So it prints both hi mom and hello world. The whole point here is that the main can call any function it needs to call, or a function can also call another function. On the third option is that a function can call itself. In this case here, I have a function calling itself, and it's going to run for a while, and then it's going to break. It breaks because it keeps on calling itself over and over and over and over again. Now, there is a way for the function to call itself in a controlled manner, in a way that eventually the function stops executing, and that's called a recursive call. I'm not going to cover that on this video, but note that it is possible for a function to call itself and run appropriately. So I'm going to delete this code for now, and I'm going to do a little cleanup here so I can move on to the next topic. Alright, so the next topic is to pass a value to the function. In this case here, when I call this function doesn't receive any value. So this function is not aware of any value that's on the main. So in order for me to pass a value to this function, I need to do a couple of changes. One, I'm going to create a variable here. So int, for example, age. And then right here on the function implementation, I need to have the same signature as the function declaration. So I'm going to put int age here as well. And then finally, I need to pass a value here. Let's say here int some age equals 21. And then I'm going to pass some age here. Now, one thing that's very important to note is that whatever variable you create here in the main is not visible here on the function. So this code right here in the bottom cannot see in any way, shape, or form the variable sum age 21. It can only see if you pass as a parameter. So in this case, I'm passing sum age as a parameter, and sum age is going to be placed right here on age. Now, this is a little confusing because I'm passing the variable sum age, but this variable sum age is going to be now stored on age. I'm doing this on purpose so you know that the name of your variable, the main, has nothing to do with the name of the variable on your function. So you can call this here whatever you want, and you can call here this whatever you want as well. Or if you want, you can call this variable here sum age. I always call a different name just so there's no confusion, but you're free to call the same name if you want to. So just know that the name doesn't matter. Alright, so here I'm passing sum age, which is 21, to this function, and then this function here is going to say hello world, and then it's going to print age. So when I run this program, it prints hello world, and then it prints the age. I'm going to put a couple of spaces right here just so it's easier to read. So hello world 21. And now just for curiosity, so what happens if we try to print here sum age? So if you try to print sum age, this is a compiling error. So you're going to have the red squiggly and you're not going to be able to run this program. And I'm doing that just to show you that this code, this block, or this function cannot see any variable that was created outside unless it creates as a global. But usually, as a good programming behavior, we programmers avoid creating variables unless it's extremely necessary. So in this case, it's not necessarily to create a global variable. The whole point here is that your function cannot see the variables that it creates outside this code. So sum age is not going to work. I need to put back the age, and that works just fine. All right, so in this case here, I'm passing one value to the function, and just as a curiosity, I'm going to change the age. The age now is going to be 35. Then right after it calls the function, I'm going to print sum age here, and I'm going to put here I'm the main. Alright, so let's see what happens if I change the value of age. So it went to the hello world function, it changed the value of age to 35, and then it displayed 35. Then after that, it went back to the main and displayed 21. So that means the age only changed inside this function. Outside this function, the value of age remains the same. So the reason that that happened is because we're passing this number by value. So this is passing by value. And when you pass by value, what you're doing is just passing the actual number and not the variable to the function. But now, what if we want to actually change the value? What if I want to send the 21 to this function, and then on the way back to the main, I want this value to remain whatever value that this function changed? If that's the case, you need to pass, instead of passing by value, we're going to pass by reference. And in order to pass by reference, all I have to do is put the ampersand sign here, and then here as well. And when I do that, whatever value I assign to the variable will change the variable in the main. And that's because I'm not passing a copy of the value anymore. I'm actually passing a reference to this variable. So if I'm passing the reference to this variable here, then if I change this, when I change age, I'm not actually changing the local value here. I'm changing the value that's stored on this variable location. So this is called pass by reference. So I'm gonna run this program again. If you look right here, the value was 21 on the main, but it went to the hello world function. It printed 35 just because I changed 35. And then once it went back to the main, the 35 got displayed because the value that's stored on that variable got changed because the function had access to the address of that variable. So if you want your function to be able to change the value, you put an ampersand here, and that indicates that's the reference for that variable. And if you don't want your function to be able to change the value, then you just pass as a value. And when you pass by value, you do not need the ampersand here, which is the address of that thing. When you pass by reference, the function executes a little bit faster because it doesn't need to create another space in memory for that given variable. When you pass by value, it will create a new space in memory for this variable right here. It will do the work and then will get destroyed. So passing by reference is a little bit faster than passing by value. In this case, I'm passing an integer, but I can also pass a float f, and I can also pass a string str, and I can pass as many values as I want. So here in this case, I'm passing 3, and then when I call this function, I also have to pass 3 values. So I'm passing some age, and then I'm gonna pass a float 10.2, and then a string Seattle, and you can pass as many values as you want to the function. So I'm passing 3 values right here. One, I'm using a variable, and then the other values I'm passing as a literal constant, which is 10.2 and Seattle. And here I can print the float f, and then I can also print the string str. Put a little bit of space here just to be separated. And then finally, if I run this program, I get the hello world 35, then I get the floats as well as the string that I passed. So you can pass one value, you can pass no value, or you can pass as many values as you want to your function. The next thing I want to show you is the default value for parameters. So the default value means a value that a given parameter will take if you don't pass any value at all for that given variable. So let's say the default value of age will be 18. So 18 is the default age. The float is going to be 10.5, and then finally the string is going to be Houston. So this will be the default value in case my function call doesn't pass those values. So in this case here, I'm passing some age, which is 21, but the default value is 18. So because the default value is 18 and I'm passing 21, the 21 will overwrite the 18. Now after that, I'm not passing any value for the float, and I'm not passing any value for the string. So because I am not passing any value for the float and the string, then this float here will take the value of 10.5 and the string will take the value of Houston. So whatever you don't pass the value will take the default value here. And I'm going to remove this here just so it's not confusing. I'm gonna run again. So here, there it is. Hello world prints 21, then prints 10.5 and Houston. So even though I am not passing those values, because I have the default values, then it will take the default values when you don't pass the values. And because I'm passing the sum age here, so sum age will overwrite 18. But if I did not pass the sum age, then every single parameter would take the default value that I set initially. And then if I want to put here sum age, and then I want to put let's say 100.5, or let me put 200, then the first two parameters will take this value here, and the third parameter here that's being ignored will take the value of Houston. So if I run this program, it takes the Houston, which was the default value. All right, so let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is the return. So how do you return values? All right, so here I'm passing a value to the function, and the function does something with this, and then it's over. But what if this function wants to do some calculation, and then this function wants to pass a value back to the main? What if I want to do that? If I want to do that, I'm going to use the return statement. So for that, I'm going to have to use the word return here. And then we're going to return something here that we don't know yet. However, in order for us to return here, so right here in the function prototype or function declaration, when you put void, that means you're not getting anything back from the function. So if you want to get something back from the function, we need to change this. So let's say in this case, I want to get a integer back from the function. So if I want to get an integer back from the function, I'm going to put an int right here. And then on the function definition, I also need to change from void to int, because the definition must match the function prototype or function declaration. And then finally, I need to return something here. In this case, I'm not returning anything, but I'm going to return 55. So now, this function returns 55. And when I run this program, this 55 here is going to be replaced by whatever you called here. So in this case here, 55 will be placed right here. So 55 gets replaced right here. And that would be equivalent to just putting 55 here. And if I just put 55 there, I can still run this program. However, you lost the 55. So you need to save the 55 somewhere. So I'm going to save this to int x. And then I can print x here, because that's the value I'm getting from the function. So you would print 55. but obviously I'm assigning a value here, right? So I'm gonna put back the function here, but the whole point is that once I return the value that the function returns, 55 in this case, replaces the function call. And then whatever the function call return gets assigned to x in this case. Whenever you have a function that returns a value, if you don't save the value somewhere, then that value is lost forever. So I'm going to run this program, and you see here that the hello world receives 21, it prints 21, and then returns 55. So you can return whatever you want to return, and I can also return, so let's say age plus plus. In other words, the person get older by 1 year, and then I return age, and then here you're gonna see that it will print 22 on the main because it was the returning value. Note that some age did not change, but the function returned a value, and you save the value on x, and then you display x right here. The sum age did not get changed because we're passing as value here and not as a reference. So just to test this, I'm going to display sum age here, and you're gonna see that sum age continues to be 21, but the returning value was 22. Now you're probably asking yourself, if I can pass many values to the function as a parameter, which is this parameter right here and this one here, if I can pass many values to the function, can the function return many values to the main? And the answer is no. You can pass values from the main to the function as a parameter. You can pass as many as you want, but when you return the value, you can return 0 values. There will be a void function, or you can return 1 value and nothing else. Now you can create a class if you want to, and then set many values to that class and return a object as a parameter, but that is for another video. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about during this video is the function overload or overloading function. So overloading function is when we create two functions with exactly the same name but with different parameters. So if I create two functions with exactly the same name here, this is an error. So if I try to run this program, I can't run because it says here there is already a function with this name and you cannot run this program. This is a syntax error. However, if one of my functions is different than the other, then it's okay to have two functions. In this case, I have two functions with exactly the same name, but they have different parameters. So this code will compile and it will run. And when I call this function here, it knows that I'm referring to this function here because of the number of parameters. Here I have one parameter and it's an integer, and then the only function that I have here that's called hello world and has one integer as a parameter is this one here. Therefore, when I execute this code, this function will be called. So instead of putting hello world, I'm going to put the chosen one just to show you that the chosen one will be called. So it calls this function. And you can have as many functions as you want with the same name as long as they have different signatures. In other words, different parameters. So in this case here, I have an integer. I can have a string, and the string is city. Chosen one. Return 0 here, or 100. Chosen one city. And here, if I pass Seattle, now even though I have three functions with exactly same name, it knows that I'm calling this function here because this function is the only one that has a string. All right, so if I run this program, I have a error. Uh-oh, that's not very good. The error says cannot convert argument 1 from constant char to integer, and that is because, oh, this is right. This is right as well. Oh, I'm missing the declaration. All right, so let's try now. All right, then if I finally run this, choosing one city equals Seattle, and the whole point here is that you can have as many overloaded functions as you want, as long as the parameter is different. You can also have a same parameter, but different number of parameters. So here you have two integers, and that would work just as well, or two integers and one string. You can do whatever you want to do as long as the signature is different for each of those functions. And something that I forgot to mention on the return is that you can return any data type you want. I'm going to do a cleanup here only to simplify this code. So just a quick cleanup. All right, so I'm gonna run this code. It's a very simple code. Just say hello world, and then I'm gonna receive a something back right here. So in this case, I'm receiving a integer because it's returning an integer, but it can also return a string. So if that's the case, if you only return a string, you would put a string right here. So now this is a string function, and then here you have a string as well. And then finally, whatever you return also has to be a string, and this string is going to be 10 return instead of a string. So now I can return a string which is 10, and then here I will need to save as a string as well, and then see out the X. So this code would work just as fine. So you can return anything you want to return as long as you change the function prototype, you change the function implementation here, and also you change the returning type of your function. All right, so here I'm returning 10, and I want to return something else. I want to return a very important string instead, str, and the string is like and subscribe. So if I pass back the str, and if I run this program, as I have here, like and subscribe. All right, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.